ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר
Hector Cathayoani.
This article is an attempt to reflect on the question of whether followers of various religions are justified in claiming to possess the absolute truth, while deeming others misguided and far from it. In many discussions between Muslims and adherents of other religions, the latter often pose the following questions. Why can't we be the ones on the right path? Isn't it possible that we hold the true religion while you follow the wrong one? Why do Muslims treat us with such a sense of superiority? Why do they insist that only they possess the truth? The answer to these questions, from the Muslim point of view, can be approached from various angles and perspectives. This debate is as old as Islam itself, and its decisive response lies in the Quran. That manifest and resplendent miracle. When compared with the scriptures of other religions, full as they are of contradictions, tedious repetition, and outdated myths, the Quran stands out clearly. In fact, in the modern era, the clarity and compelling nature of the Quran make any apologetics almost unnecessary. Therefore, I will address the issue from a different angle and focus on what I believe is the most important foundation of any religion: the concept of God. Many ancient and modern philosophers, logicians, and thinkers have agreed that the existence of this world necessitates a creator. And pure reason demands that this creator must be characterized by absolute perfection. Any imperfection would subject such a being to decline and mortality, rendering him incapable of creating this marvelous, precisely ordered universe, governed by immutable and coherent laws. Perfection also entails oneness. If this deity needed another god to support or oppose him, then neither would be worthy of worship due to their dependency and imperfection. If there were multiple gods, each would assert dominion over his creation, leading to disorder and collapse of the cosmic system. As such, reason compels us to conclude that the universe has one creator, absolutely perfect. From this shared premise, we must examine the world's major religions, followed by billions around the globe, and assess their concept of God. The order here is not chronological, but rather by number of adherents, with Islam discussed last for a specific reason. Let us begin with Christianity, the world's largest religion with nearly 2.5 billion adherents. However, as many know, the actual number of practicing Christians is much lower than this figure suggests. Most identify as Christians by heritage, not belief, and churches are often nearly empty, unlike the mosques, which are often filled to overflowing, especially on Fridays. Setting this aside, the Christian view of God, across its diverse sects and doctrines, declares him not as a single entity, but as a Trinity. Three persons in one. Christians also affirm that God has a son, who in some sects is also divine, who resided in a woman's womb for 9 months, was born like any mortal, lived 33 years eating, drinking, and undergoing all the human experiences unbefitting of a perfect, transcendent God. Furthermore, this God was tortured and killed by his enemies through crucifixion, a death marked by humiliation. Even early Christians who professed God's oneness and denied his having a son were declared heretics and exiled from the church, especially after the Council of Nicaea in 325 CE. Since then, monotheism and God's transcendence have been virtually erased from mainstream Christianity. Hence, Christianity must be excluded from our examination on the basis of the concept of God. Turning to Hinduism, which has over 1 billion followers, it too is excluded due to its sole polytheism. Buddhism, followed by around 500 million people, also falls outside our focus as it does not posit a central deity. In Buddhism, gods are eternal beings immersed in their pleasures and disconnected from the world. Buddhism is more a way of life, ethics, and spirituality than a conventional religion. The foi, Sikh faith, is similarly excluded. It is not a distinct religion in the traditional sense, but rather a syncretic mix of several religions. It is also relatively recent, only around 500 years old, and has a very small number of adherents, about 24 million. Now we come to a Judaism. While Jews affirm God's oneness, their depiction of him closely resembles that of a human being and attributes to him many flaws. According to Jewish texts, God lacks knowledge of the unseen and is portrayed as fearful and weak. When he created Adam, he feared that Adam might eat from the tree of knowledge and become like him, thus prohibiting him from doing so, lest his own kingdom be threatened by a being he himself had created. This implies that the Jewish God did not foresee Adam's disobedience and feared his own creation. Furthermore, he is described as growing tired after creating the world, necessitating rest on the seventh day. The Quran refutes this in the verse, "And we did certainly create the heavens and the earth, and what is between them in 6 days, and there touched us no weariness." Kaf 38. In the Jewish view, God is also poor, while his worshippers are wealthy. The Quran recounts their blasphemy. Indeed, Allah has heard the statement of those who said, "Indeed, Allah is poor, while we are rich." Al-Imran 181. He is also seen as stingy, with a hand chained from giving, as the Quran counters. And the Jews say, "The hand of Allah is chained." Chained are their hands, and cursed are they for what they say. Rather, both his hands are extended. He spends however he wills. Al-Ma'idah 64. Even more absurd, their God can be what? Deceived. According to Genesis, when the blind Isaac sought to bless his son Esau and appoint him as prophet, Jacob, also called Israel, disguised himself and tricked his father into blessing him instead, thus becoming a prophet. This places God on equal footing with Jacob in gullibility. In sum, the Qaw'u Jewish concept of God contradicts the very idea of absolute perfection, reducing him to the level of his creatures, if not lower. Can such a deity be worthy of worship? And is it then reasonable for Jews to claim exclusive possession of the truth and label non-Jews, Goyim, as misguided? Having reached the end of this analysis, we are left with only one religion, Islam. With around 2 billion adherents and growing rapidly, the numerical gap between Islam and Christianity is shrinking at an extraordinary pace. Islam has had a profound influence on the world from its emergence in the 7th century to the present day. Muslims view God with awe, reverence, and deep devotion, firmly believing in his absolute perfection and transcendence from any flaw or need. This belief is shared across all Islamic schools of thought, denominations, sects, and philosophical traditions. This divine perfection is clearly manifested in Islam's sacred text, the glorious Quran. Thus, Islam stands alone at the finish line of this philosophical race, having fulfilled the criterion on which this entire discussion is based. A criterion upheld by the majority of fair-minded philosophers and rational thinkers throughout history. That the true God must be absolutely perfect and singular, with no partner or equal.
سنريهم آياتنا في الآفاق حتى يتبين لهم أنه الحق